I'm joined now by Senator Chris Coons from Delaware. He's a member of the Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committee. Senator, thank you for joining us. Let me start first. I understand you reviewed some of the intelligence at question today?
Yes.
Can you tell us, I know there's some restrictions here, but in terms of the scope of what you think you were presented with today, did you come away with a sense of what this was pointing to or not pointing to?
It filled in some of the details beyond what's in press reports. But frankly, Steve, I think it's urgent that members of Congress get a full briefing. What was presented to the president, what was known to senior leaders in the White House a year or more ago, as I'm sure you've seen from press reports, there is a specific incident in which 3 U.S. Marines were killed, including one from Delaware, Staff Sergeant Christopher Slutman. That is a particular focus of ongoing discussion. I think it's important that all members of Congress know how long ago was the president briefed on this. If he didn't read his briefing papers, why not? I just heard the suggestion that the White House position is this wasn't an issue that rose to the level that required briefing the president. How's that possible? That if Russia was paying bounties to the Taliban or the Haqqani network or other actors or players in Afghanistan to target American and coalition forces, and that resulted in the deaths of Americans or our coalition partners in the field, how is that not something that rises to the level of the president's concern? I want to be briefed on what the president did in response and on what plans they have going forward to make sure that Americans and our coalition partners who continue to serve in Afghanistan are protected and that Russia is made to pay a price.
If this is true, if the reporting about this intelligence is true and this is a bounty situation, what's the price that Russia should pay?
Well, frankly, we've had opportunity after opportunity in the last few years for President Trump to step forward and to embrace sanctions that we've passed here in Congress, ways that we could impose costs on Russia directly or indirectly. And he has repeatedly failed to do so, to stand up and defend our elections, to stand up and advocate for the conclusions of our own intelligence community, to stand in common with our European partners. Frankly, as you know, this year the United States is the chair of the G7. President Trump tried to invite Putin to the G7 meeting and to re-include them and to expand it to the G8. So there are so many different ways, directly and indirectly, that we could and should impose further costs on Russia. But tragically, our president has a record of refusing to do so over and over in the last 3 years.
Again, putting aside the specifics with Trump, I'm just curious what you think would be a warranted response here. Again, if this were true, you're talking about the Russian military intelligence paying for the deaths of American soldiers. You were outlining some diplomatic, some sanctions responses there. Is that something that calls for some kind of military response?
I'm not going to leap to that conclusion, Steve. I'm a little... I'm not in a good place to make a rational decision about this right now. That's the kind of thing that certainly appeals to my emotions. I think this is an outrageous action by the Russians. Frankly, if you look at what the global response was, the response of many of our allies when they attempted to kill a Russian citizen within the United Kingdom, most of our allies across Western Europe and in other nations and other places in the world, in Asia, threw out Russian diplomats. That was for an attempted killing of a former Russian citizen. This may be the targeted killing of Americans and American service members. I think it would call for a much stronger response. But, Steve, I want to be measured. I want to have some time to think about this. I'm pretty upset right now.
I know House Democrats today, a day after House Republicans met at the White House, got a briefing from some intelligence officials there. I know John Ratcliffe, the director of national intelligence, is set to meet with some senators tomorrow. Who else, who specifically would you like to hear from here?
I'd like to know whether or not field commanders in Afghanistan were briefed, whether or not protective actions were taken. I'd like to know whether or not our diplomats and our military leaders conveyed to their counterparts in Russia our intention to take action against Russian interests if they continued. And I'd frankly like to know what else was done to strengthen collection efforts to make certain that we knew what was or was not being done against our troops in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and in other places where we know they've been exposed to Russian action, real or threatened.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.